Hi, my name is Heather Mackey. I am the owner of Rare Bird Medicine. Today I wanted to talk about the art of conversation. I, the more I age and connect with humans, the more I experience the art of conversation becoming a dead art. It's like, I've wanted to do this video for a hot minute because it feels like an area where two-leggeds may be seeking some support as we engage with technology and engage with so many formats of information. I mean, it's certainly not the 50s where you'd sit on your stoop and say hi to the neighbor and be engaged with conversation on a more regular basis. Typically, many two-leggeds are engaging with, like right now, if you're watching this video, engaging with technology, and they're just receiving information. And because they're not engaged in this information exchange called conversation, when the opportunity flushes up to engage in conversation, it's like, and I was born in a time frame when you had a phone with, like, it was real advanced when we got the long cords and you could take the phone into another room, like the fridge, and get something to drink. It's like, woo, but you had to wait your turn to talk on the phone. So cell phones were developed in my timeline. I can say, because I'm 45 and I grew up in a time when you weren't texting people, if you wanted to connect with someone, you got on the phone and you had a conversation. And so I feel like the more we engage with conversations being like, look, here's a couple sentences via text, look, here's a couple sentences via text, it just, there are a lot of things lost in translation through text. I mean, I'm always joking around, and I've definitely had people throughout my life be like, wait, what? That's like, okay, I'm being silly. If I'm saying it, I'm being silly, right? just messing with you, dude. So what I want to say about the art of conversation is a two-way street. And when I think on this topic, the person that comes to mind first is my sister. And the reason she comes to mind is because she used to live at a bed and breakfast in downtown Dallas. And she lived with a woman named Amelia Cole Jenkins from Louisiana. And Amelia would talk to her about, honey, you've got to know the art of conversation. And conversation, it is a two-way street. So as a double fire sign, anyone who knows me knows that I have a genuine and deep interest in you. And also, I sometimes get so enamored with my own fire and what I'm talking about that I can forget I'm in a conversation sometimes. So anyone who knows me has had some point where I just, like, myopically was like, blah, 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 talking about whatever I wanted to say or share that day. And I really enjoy receiving others. Like, as a Sagittarius, being the spiritual teacher and the philosopher of the zodiac, I want to hear other people's philosophies. But when the topic of, like, let's say philosophy comes up with a friend, I get excited and I'm like, oh, have you heard about this? Have you heard about this? And then I have to, like, calm down and remember to ask questions. So that's one of my challenges in the art of conversation, is to not allow my excitation to cause me to run down a pathway so far that I've lost sight that someone is listening, and also that I want to hear from them and I want to hear their perspectives and opinions. This can occur a lot too with, narcissism, egotism. Somebody that's narcissistic or super egotistical kind of usually likes a lot of attention. And with those qualities and those attributes, you can lose sight of hearing other people. So there are a few different ways that can occur. So I want to say, on the one hand, in the art of conversation, it's really important to be aware that you are asking questions. One of the most foundational components of really being a phenomenal conversationalist is being a phenomenal question asker. And so you can ask questions like, what do you do for a living? These are common normative questions, just because we're conditioned to think in terms of work. We're conditioned to think in terms of work. So it's like, what is your work? So I don't want to vilify that. It's conditioning, but you can really even start to consider lots of cool and fun, interesting questions you can ask people that you're getting to know. What is your philosophy on the dead? What do you think happens to them? You know, what do you think is the effect of thought? Do you think your thoughts influence your reality? Where do you think the mind exists? You know, there are all kinds of questions based on whatever your interests are. Um, you know, maybe it's music, but there are all kinds of questions you can ask, even around your own interest, to see what others think and feel if you're wanting to grow on that topic of interest. And then there's also the quality of asking questions about the person that you're talking to and what their interests are. If you start asking someone a bunch of sports questions or a bunch of music questions and they're like, no, don't know, I don't know, it helps to be empathetic and aware that that person isn't familiar with that topic, but they are familiar with other topics. So then you can ask questions like, wow, these are really my topics of interest. These are my hobbies. What are your topics of interest? What are your hobbies? Do you have any things that you tend to study or tend to focus on, or what really lights you up? Is there anything that when you do it, you like lose time when you're doing it because you're just so riveted by what you're doing? So another part of the art of conversation is ensuring that you're communicating about topics of interest for the person that you're talking to. It's nice to communicate about mutual interests, and it's always, you know, I find expansive to learn about new topics. And we do that by asking questions. What? You love driving tractors? I've never driven one. What's that like? How long have you done that? You grew up on a farm? Do tell. You know, did y'all have chickens? What? You had goats? Do they really sleep in trees? You know, so you can just be open to like expanding and filling your cup with new information. Another thing that I was kind of thinking about, because being a fire sign, I draw a lot of air signs to me because air gets the fire going. And I love it, you know, like all my freaking Libra friends will ask questions. So air signs are more, you know, in the thoughts and intellectual, tend to like memes and communication and questions. And so air signs can sometimes ask lots of questions. They can be great conversationalists when it comes to the aspect of asking questions, evoking conversation as a result of being a questioner. So being a questioner is a foundational component of the art of being a conversationalist. However, a lot of times the nature of constantly asking questions can be a way to kind of avoid digging into your own self and sharing your own vulnerable truth and sharing your own vulnerable insights because you're constantly getting the other person to share. So I would say that for those of you that find yourself to be great questioners and you find that where you go, conversation gets stirred, it can help to know that a lot of times others really want to know you too. So just being open to receiving questions, like, you know, if you ask someone a question, maybe starting, if you tend to always ask questions, starting with, I feel this is what happens when we die. What do you think? So that you make sure you're always having that reciprocitous exchange of like pouring into and pouring into and pouring into and pouring into. So there's like an exchange of energy there. What makes conversation awkward? And the reason so many feel like they can't take a phone call, part of it is a lot of two-leggeds today didn't grow up with phones. They grew up with texting. But things that can make us feel like we can't take a phone call or feel like we don't know how to have a phone conversation is fear of that awkward silence. So also being comfortable with silence can be a valuable aspect of being a communicator. Being able to allow for pregnant pause in conversations, being able to allow for a certain level of comfort in one another's silence, not always feeling every little moment with conversation, allowing people to kind of sit and stew and consider and just deciding that that's not awkward. Silence doesn't have to be awkward. It can actually be a place where we have respite and we have a moment to like reflect on what we've been talking about or consider a new topic. I will say that empathy is a huge component of quality conversation as well. Just being empathetic or emotionally intelligent or having some level of emotional sensitivity to the other person. If they're being like quick, short, really direct in their answers, they might not really feel like talking. So that's another part of the art of conversation. When you're being empathetic, is just recognizing, wow, your answers are really quick and really short. It kind of feels to me like you don't talk. So I would say another part of conversation is freeing yourself to say whatever. Talk about the elephant in the room. Give yourself freedom to be like, hey, it seems like you're kind of quiet, or do you feel like not talking right now? We can talk another time. Like part of really embracing that art is knowing when to let a conversation go too. We don't have to push. Sometimes people just feel introverted or they feel internal. I feel that all the time. So like I'm processing worlds within worlds within worlds. And so sometimes I'm so far in here that it's like, I just don't, it's kind of hard to get outside of myself to have a conversation. So being aware of where the other that you're talking to kind of is and asking about it, not making assumptions, is also helpful. Just like, hey, I notice your answers are pretty quick. Is it just that we're talking about stuff you don't really like, or do you feel quiet right now, or what's going on? So just being open to saying anything and everything, being free to express your truth. Another aspect of that, I would say, is sharing your truth. If you're having a conversation with someone and they have XYZ philosophy and you don't want to freak them out with your philosophy, I've spent a lot of time growing up in the Bible Belt. My mom always told me, as a metaphysician, she was like, honey, don't talk about your beliefs with just anybody, because they're not going to get it. I think she just didn't want people giving me stink eye or evil eye. And I had to learn that as I age, that like, actually my truth gets to be present in any room that I walk into. And if it makes others uncomfortable, I'm more than happy to say, I'm so sorry if that made you think I was the devil, or I'm gonna like, I'm so sorry if that's giving you negative thoughts, negative feelings based on your belief matrix. I have respect for it. And if you think that, please feel free to pray for me. Or, I'm never wanting to make someone feel uncomfortable because of my belief matrix, but I surely don't want to stick it in a box and throw it under the bed, because my particular belief matrix, I spent past lives being killed for. So this is the life where I'm going to talk about it, and I'm not going to just hide it because it might be uncomfortable. And it actually helps all of us in conversation when it comes to opening up greater diversity, greater availability to be present with the fact that diversity of philosophy has always been present at Earth School. That's always been the deal. There's always been a multitudinous nature of philosophy down here at Earth School with two-leggeds. We've never all believed the same thing, other than like the sun will rise or I have to die, things like that we do. But as a general rule, when it comes to your philosophy, that's usually very unique and distinct. Even entire group going to the same building or same church or same temple or same mosque, every single two-legged in there has a different philosophy. So I think being open is really helpful in conversation, being open and receptive, but just being willing to, if you notice somebody's like shutting down or feeling uncomfortable, just being willing to clean that up. Hey, I noticed the energy kind of shifted in our conversation. Did I say something that was upsetting? Feel free to be really open with me, because it's not my intent to upset you. And if I did upset you, I respect your beliefs. I think it's really helpful to consider the art of conversation and some of the things we can bring to the table as we converse with one another. If you enjoy YouTube, you can subscribe to Rare Bird Medicine. And we do have some upcoming classes, one on reading the tarot, one on being a witch. And you can go to rarebirdmedicine.com, click on the classes link, and become part of these beautiful groups that are coming together. Blessed be.